I'd like to introduce Simon Alexander. He's a senior programmer analyst and virtual reality, extended reality specialist here at the University of Wyoming. And he's going to be talking about, does immersive technology have a place in transformative education in prison? I know a few of you have made it back to his table back there to try out some of the virtual and augmented reality tools that he has. And hopefully, if you haven't, you'll get a chance to go back there sometime today. So I'm going to give this over to Simon. Have fun.
Right, good morning, everyone. As Alex said, I'm kind of a bit of an outlier in that I'm a software developer. I'm a software engineer, but I've lectured, I've taught, I have a specialism in visualization, but I also have a formal qualification in education, essentially, from lecturing in universities to trying to be a high school maths teacher. Which is a lovely blend to have, and especially when I try and bring it into like a context of education within a correction facility environment. So, quick journey, 5 things I'm hopefully going to kind of look at. I'm aware we've got lunch coming up, so I shall make this as quick as I can. So, what is immersive technology? Well, up on the board there we have like an old, boring academic kind of definition. Emulate a physical environment in a digital or simulated world, creating a sense of immersion. Well, to be honest, it's much more broad than that nowadays, and it needs to be because of the technology we have. So, I mean, you could actually say it's a window to a world from your imagination. It's a means to create a setting, a place, a space that you can't access in your normal, regular, day-to-day life. The idea of going to explore somewhere that you cannot get to. It's the idea of adding an extra dimension, another level of accessibility, another level of experience, of perspective that you cannot normally access. And this idea of immersion is the idea to create such an engaging environment that basically you forget where you are. You forget that there's a real world outside of this immersive technology that you've kind of entered into. It comes in many shapes and forms, and it's worth just spending a little bit of time very quickly going over the type of technology we have. So the first one, people would have heard the idea of virtual reality. The term's been around 30 years. It's finally becoming accessible within the mainstream, which is really important, which makes it a lot more accessible. It's come out of the research lab, you can now get it into your home. It does come in many shapes and forms. Literally, you can create, using a bit of cardboard and your smart little mobile phone, an immersive environment. I can take a panoramic view, panoramic photograph, and literally within half an hour, I can upload it using some technology from Google, which is freely available, and create an expedition. I could go outside somewhere and create an experience that I can then publish and make accessible to anyone and everyone. With a bit more technology, I can create a stereoscopic 3D video. With a bit more technology, I can create a purely 3D computer-generated environment. And they all have pros and cons. They all have a context where they are useful in. So the idea of creating a 360 video of a 6x9 solitary confinement cell that I can put someone into and they can experience that. I can take people to the Sistine Chapel and they can stand in there and just be amazed by the architecture and the paintings and the drawings within that setting. I can take someone and hoist them up and down from a helicopter. I can put them on a tugboat that's being rammed against a wind turbine out in the North Sea with 6-foot swells going up and down. I can put someone in a wheelchair who's being exposed to a conversation where there is bias. I can put myself in the position, I can change my gender if that's what I want to do. This is what the immersive technology is there to achieve and to assist. Now, augmented reality is the idea of using images, models, and putting it into the real world. So the three examples we have on there are using smartphone. Has anyone used Pokemon Go? Has anyone heard of Pokemon Go? That is augmented reality. The idea of basically using a tablet, putting on a mark on a table, and projecting a 3D model into that environment. And what we will see, I mean, what we did see that went away and now it's coming back, is the use of smart glasses. It's projecting, it's augmenting information into our real world. Pros and cons of both. Matrix style, kids are wearing like headsets, being projected or using this 3D computer graphics environment. Compared to an augmented reality setting with multiple users, all looking at the same, in this case, kind of human anatomy. There are pros and cons. I prefer the image on right-hand side because you still got that natural human communication. I can see the people I'm talking to, those little human cues, those little human interactions, which are so important within the teaching environment, you don't necessarily get within virtual reality. But I don't want to dismiss it because there's things I can do in there I can't do in augmented reality. Now, the best of both worlds, and this is like the new kind of cutting edge technology, is the idea of mixed reality. This is the idea of projecting spatially aware 3D models into my real world. So in the example we got here, we've got multiple people looking at an architectural kind of setting. That model is spatially aware of that table. It knows the table exists there. It knows it's solid. That content is persistent. I could go out in the environment. I could come back in. So what it offers is the benefits of creating three-dimensional content, but with that augmented reality element of multiple users still interacting and looking at each other. I mean, there's so much more it can do with all these technologies, but I'm aware I haven't got enough time to really talk about it. Another interesting technology which is worth talking about, which I'll come back to again with an example in a little while, is the idea of a cave. It literally is called a cave. It's a 10-foot by 10-foot by 10-foot box that you step into, and it uses video projection on the various like walls and the floors and the ceiling, depending on the dimensions you've got, that you step into physically. Again, it offers collaboration, multiple users. It is another form of immersive technology. Now, what I don't want to do, though, is get bogged down with the technology. We need to look past the technology. But that is the whole idea of using immersive technology and what it kind of offers. And before I talk about immersive technology within the prison educational setting, I've got two open questions. Hopefully we can discuss kind of afterwards. This conference is obviously about transformative education. What is transformative education? And my next kind of open question is this tech for tech's sake? Just looking for an application. People trying to make money out of this. Where is the empirical evidence that this type of immersive technology actually works? So, what is transformative education? These are just some of the examples that I've heard from yesterday, and are all user cases out there that legitimately can be used. Curriculum-based teaching, hard skills-based teaching, or vocational kind of skills. Those are the two main areas that my research has taken me into and I've developed applications for. But is it also there to generate the soft skills, interview preparation, life-based skills, the idea of coping with stress and anxiety, developing experiences and empathy? It's really interesting listening to the use and teaching of philosophy and stoicism. Can I create a role-play environment to put people in there, which you can then come out of and discuss various kind of merits and the virtues that stoicism is trying to imply or put across? Rehabilitation, therapy, and there's others. In some cases, just using it as an incentive works really well. Recent study from Cornell University actually said, well, it didn't actually improve the grades of the students. But what it did do was get them into the classroom. They knew if they were in the classroom, they'd get 5 minutes using this immersive technology. It engaged them within the lesson, within that environment, and they were taught, and they wanted to be there. Is incentive transformative education? Is it? Open question. So, empirical evidence. So one of my main areas is more on curriculum-based teaching. There are numerous studies and reports from NASA, DARPA, NSF, and probably more importantly, the Office of Educational Technology. From a much more academic sense, my interpretation of the research is from a pedagogical side. It's the use of constructivism as a philosophy within the teaching environment, and essentially learning by doing. I could talk for hours, we could have conversations simply on this, but obviously I'm aware of time, so you'll have to kind of like take my word for it. There are references I can pass you on to, but from a teaching perspective, the empirical evidence is pretty good. There's still stuff to do, there's still much more research out there, but there's enough to basically say, yes, this technology can and does make a difference. For more the kind of rehabilitation, therapy, empathy and training point of view, I would direct you to the virtual medicine conference that literally was at the beginning of this week, down in Los Angeles. They had workshops and sessions on the use of technology within therapy, within psychiatry, within self-awareness, run from a hospital by the physicians. So it's not a company selling technology, trying to find that place to use it. This is from the practitioners within that field actually using the technology to benefit in that domain. So, 3 quick examples of where this technology is currently being used within the prison environment. First one is a company called Virtual Rehab, and here we've got 3 examples. The first one is just general integration back into society, how to use an ATM. The second one, the middle one, is more you're based on vocational training. What does a car engine look like? Open it up, explore inside, interact, play with it, break it. Doesn't matter if you break it, I just restart my application again. We can start from scratch. Probably the more interesting one is the one on the kind of, here we go, the right-hand side, which is more on the cognitive behavioral kind of therapy. I can put someone safely in an environment, expose them in this case to, well, here's a needle, here's some drugs, what are you going to do? How are you feeling about seeing this, being placed in an environment where you're exposed to this safely? Second company is called NESA. They are interesting in that they provide virtual training for both the law enforcement side of it, as well as preparing inmates to go back into the real world. They use a combination of 3D computer-generated content, as well as 360 video and panoramic kind of images. What's interesting again is the breadth of areas that they're using this technology. From creating role plays and, you know, in this case, domestic settings. Preparing people to cope with people like someone who's just about to jump off a bridge. And what is interesting, and this is why it's good for, shall we say, the developers such as myself to come and talk to people within the field, is we take things for granted. So they have a video of someone preparing hot dogs. My first impression is, do you know how to do a hot dog? No, they won't. Because someone who's been incarcerated for 25 years probably has never had access to a kitchen. So some of the most simplest scenarios, from my point of view, that I could say I could ignore because I'm not actively working out in the field, in the domain, I would ignore. But this is why it's so important to come to here, to listen and to learn and to collaborate and work with people to create these appropriate settings. Now, the one I find most interesting is the idea of, this is an example, a really basic version of the cave. This was some research back, I think initially started in 2010, but this installation was in 2014. And I'd really be interested to catch up with Erin from the University of Utah, because this is where it initially came out of. It was called the Blue Room. And it was the idea of just having a room, nothing in there, essentially bar like a video projection. And from simply projecting a video of a nature scene, it's there to help calm the prisoners down. You could use it as an incentive. And as I understand, I mean, I really came across this kind of recently, and I actually came across it as a complete tangent from reading a book about getting back into nature and how kind of nature assists your general well-being, that I've come across it. So I don't know how the data has gone, whether it's still being explored and still being used, but it does give a bit more of a away from the technology example, that you can generate an immersive environment without spending tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars on really expensive kit. Each environment, though, still has to be kind of like managed, still has to be observed. Because this really simple example, by putting someone in an environment and using a video to calm them down, can have adverse effects. So they give an example where they had an inmate in this environment who got upset and agitated. They went in and said, well, you know, what's the problem? And they were showing a video, I think, of the beach. And he said, this reminds me of home. And this is where I'm stuck. Changed the video to a scene from, I think it was a forest, and it had the desired effect. It helped to calm them down. And there are other stories of an inmate, they had to kind of move from one cell to another, and he didn't want to. And they said, well, how about giving you like half an hour to an hour in the Blue Room? I said, yeah, that'll do. Take him, put him in, calm him down, he moved cells with no problem. Is this transformative education? Open question, I'm not going to answer it, but it does demonstrate where this type of technology, in a really simple form, can have a really positive effect in the appropriate kind of setting. So, how to develop and how to put this into practice. Technology, no matter how well it is designed, is of little educational value unless it engages learners in the active learning activity. Immersive technology needs to be appropriately designed and applied. Myself as a developer, I have to work with the educators, with the teachers, instructional designers. It has to be used in a setting where there is appropriate assessment strategies. What is the learning plan? What is the objectives? What are we doing with this technology to actually make it useful and beneficial within this particular setting or this particular kind of like lesson? Students still need some form of guidance to use it, but they also need an element of freedom and self-control, so they haven't got the teacher breathing down the neck and they can explore. It still has to facilitate the idea of constructivism. It still has to enable them to learn by doing. And this is where it's so important to build up those collaborations and those relationships in this inter-multidisciplinary environment setting. And what this slide doesn't indicate or talk about are the factors that are unique, the constraints, the issues, the logistic nightmares that are offered are unique to the prison correction facility environment. So, some ideas about and suggestions about how to do this. Essential kind of hub. It has to be academically backed. There has to be the empirical evidence. Don't just go to a company and says, I've got this VR kit, it's going to be great. Is it? Question. Classroom accessible resources. What's great about the Google Expedition kit we've got there, or I'm demonstrating of the table over there, it comes in a box. I can wheel it. I can put it in the back of my car and I can take it. And that's one thing with respect to the kind of technology and the rig I've got over there, that there is an element of people having tech phobia. I mean, if you look at what I've got over there, I've got 2 cameras, I've got a desktop, I've got a monitor, I've got wires everywhere. It is off-putting. This is an example of the Magic Leap. This is all it is. No wires, you're not tethered to a desktop. It's still ergonomically, not that wearable. It will still mess up your hair. Funny, it's a joke, but also I've had school classes coming in and having a 15-year-old boy going, oh, I'm not going in there, it's going to mess my hair up. I'm like, okay, well, what do I do about that? And even when he does put it on, the amount of hair product that he then leaves on it. But these, again, these are kind of the health and safety issues. I've had examples where people have gone out, and after a day, the next day, there's a whole issue of pink eye going around the class. It is laughable, but these are you could say, the completely non-tech issues that have to be considered. What I like about this, though, is that I'm not tethered to anything. I can walk around anywhere. This is wireless. And as the technology and the hardware develops, that will get more wearable. So don't be put off by the technology you see in the corner. Come over, use it, experience it. Spark that idea and imagination of where you can use it within your particular domain, context, and setting. So, final slide. Does immersive technology have a place in transformative education in prison? It won't replace the real and the natural methods of education, and I wouldn't want it to. But the correct technology, used in the appropriate context for a specific purpose with empirical guidelines, yes, it will have a place to assist, extend, augment, and enhance education within the prison environment. And at that point, I shall say thank you, and I shall stop. Now, I say I will stop. There are 3 people I need to thank, or 3 groups, actually. First of all, Emma Jane Alexander. And all these people work within UW. So Emma Jane Alexander runs the Shell 3D Visualization Center. So all the technology I've got over there and the cave we have on campus. And the idea of this center is to integrate with faculty, staff, outside of the university, to bring people in to develop and to explore this type of technology. I have to thank Dr. Karen Vaughan and Dr. Laura Vietti, who provided me and allowed me to use the Google Expeditions Kit. So literally, they've given me a box, I've taken it, I've used it, I'll bring it in the box, I'll put it back. And I have to thank Alex from his day role as the Client Support Services within IT. Again, provided me some kit and some specific examples. And finally, I'd just like to thank Alex for giving me the opportunity to come and share this wonderful technology which can benefit so many people where appropriately used, the opportunity to speak. So thank you. Now I will shut up.
Okay, so we have a few minutes for questions. Who has a question? Anyone? Ben?
That's great. Thank you. I'm wondering about, have you looked into restrictions for DOC kind of considerations about having this technology on site in a prison? Like I know in the UK, they are really tight, they really won't let anything into a prison. So I'm thinking about applying this, especially the Google kit, and I'm just wondering about how feasible that's going to be.
I would say 5% no. And this, I'm aware of certain issues. I would say this is more of a context that I'm trying to take, technology, like education, pretty strong on. Prison setting, no. This is a new context, and it's only working the enthusiasm of people like Alex that say, can we use this? And I'm like, I think we can. So, no, I don't have an awful lot of experience. What is interesting, though, just some of the, again, things I probably take for granted, is that I'm like, where's it gone? I can use my phone, and literally within an hour, I was talking with someone earlier about like an art expedition. I can go in there, so my 3D panoramic view, I can upload it to a free application called Tour Create. I can create an expedition and I can publish it. And they say, well, you don't have any Wi-Fi. You have no connection. You can't take a cell phone in. And I'm like, oh, okay. I feel a bit stupid. But that's where it's really important for the likes of myself to work and to listen and to take on board what you can and can't do. I might sound really stupid not to give away the secret, but like, no, this isn't a smartphone. This is a mini tablet. Tablets are allowed in. Smartphones aren't. And to be honest, the equipment we've got over there aren't cell phones. They are mini tablets. They have no SIM card in them. You cannot dial out. You can make a phone call. So no, I am having to learn from scratch. I should not make any assumptions of, let me class it as the logistic issues and the risky kind of issues of taking this kind of equipment and using it within a correction facility. But this is where I'm here to learn. And this is where it is that collaboration with everyone. I'll teach you about how to use the tech and where you can use it. You bring to me the issues and the problems you've got and the ideas you've got, and we work together and we will create something together. Does that answer? I nearly said, oh, good old Blue Peter fashion, because I thought you might appreciate that. No one else will. Anyone else know what Blue Peter is? No. Look it up. It's wonderful. Complete tangent. Sorry.
One of the reasons that I approached Simon was because we have a difficulty bringing any type of science-based lab courses into the prisons. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting, instead of bringing a kit of chemicals for chemistry class, that we would do something instead in virtual reality that would fulfill those same lab requirements. It could potentially be cheaper and actually get into a facility once we show that the technology is secure, safe, doesn't have an internet connection, doesn't have cell phone. So it's just an area that we're exploring. I know others have done some exploration. And so that was just one of the examples of why we wanted to bring this here, because we will have to eventually bring in lab science courses, but we can't bring the equipment in.
The one thing I would say to kind of extend that is there is unbiased perception that this is only for STEAM. This is tech. You can only use it in a tech classroom. No, you can use it in any educational setting. With whatever content you have, there is an example or something that could be developed. So this is why I kind of jumped on the, using Stoicism. You can say, here's your book, lots of discussions. You can create content within immersive technology. And also, I should say, as another kind of like tangent, it doesn't have to be immersive technology. I can create stuff, appropriate applications to assist and benefit that education with just a monitor and a desk and a monitor and a mouse, or just a tablet. So again, don't assume you have to use all this high-tech technology. And it makes a much broader discussion of just bringing kind of digital technology into the educational setting. I have a focus and my passion is immersive tech, but I'm aware of all the other digital tech around that still can be kind of like used. Sorry.
And Simon has also done work creating job training skills through virtual reality. He mentioned the wind turbine, offshore wind turbine, because it's too dangerous, it's too expensive to bring people on this actual training, so you do it in virtual reality to get ready for it. And so vocational training is another way. You don't have to have a very expensive vocational training platform in your facility. You could do some of it at least through virtual reality. I saw some hands up. Good, we've got some people going.
While you're walking over there, with respect to the kind of vocational training, it also helped with essentially the interview process. So wind turbines, I had the pleasure of climbing up a 90-foot wind turbine. It's exhausting. Once you get to the top and you open the panel and you look out, it is scary as hell. I wouldn't say I'm afraid of heights, but when you're up there swinging around a little bit, it's not the most comfortable place in the world. Would I want a job in there? No. So one aspect was to say, right, let's put people in that safe environment to say, this is what you're going to have day to day. Do you really want to do this? Rather than taking them through hours and hours of training for something which when you then actually put them out in the field, no, they're not prepared for. Sorry.
Hi. So have you, because this is an immersive field, an emerging field, not an immersive field, an emerging field for employment.
Yep.
Have you explored ways that you can integrate teaching how to develop these platforms for your incarcerated students? And are you looking at what that might look like, teach classes on, and I don't know, we talked about this a little bit, if this is something that if you code differently for this kind of technology than you would for an app or for something else?
So many things, light bulbs firing, things. I'll say no. The answer is no. At this point, I am new to applying this within the field of the correctional facility. It's been really interesting listening yesterday about, is there actually a difference between someone within a college compared to someone within a correction facility of how they should be taught and what facilities and resources should they be allowed to use. So, I could say in one aspect, the same way I can use this technology within the UW setting, why can't I use it, or should I be allowed to use it within the confines of the correctional facility? The way they actually learn, I could go off complete tangents here. The way they learn, how they're exposed to that learning, should there be any difference? I'd probably say no, they shouldn't. You talk about learning styles, and this will be the last thing I'll say. When I did my postgraduate certificate in education, we put into various settings, and there was like 3 learning styles. You're either, here we go, visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. You look, you listen, you do. And it's like, well, where does this come from? And then, you actually read the literature, and the last time I looked, there's like over 70 different learning styles. It's just like, oh my God, and I could go complete tangent of how to integrate all those different learning styles into that environment. So, I could argue maybe there are different learning styles with respect to individuals depending on the environment they're in, but should there be any difference? Should I brand them, maybe an inappropriate term, compared to being someone in university compared to someone like an inmate? So I would say no, they should be given the same opportunities. Or what I would look at is developing something and those kind of models and frameworks that are empirically kind of based that should be accessible to anyone. The idea of, do I have a wireless connection within a correctional facility? There's no reason why I can't develop something that doesn't need a wireless connection. This whole, I can publish it out into the web. It can be accessible by anyone and everyone. Yeah, fine. But there's no reason why I can't load it onto a desktop and bring it in that way. The environment, the use of the technology is still exactly the same. All I've done is remove the idea they have to have supposedly a wireless technology to make this work. No, I don't agree with that. So I don't think it should impose any huge significant restrictions from a university setting into like a correctional facility. Is that okay? Is that answer?
I actually have a question more for Alec and Mr. Lampert. So you've seen this presentation. What do you think are the practicalities of bringing this into a prison setting? I know you mentioned like chemistry, but what do you think about? I'm putting you on the spot, I realize, but I'm thinking about my own experience in the women's center and the limited technologies, I guess you could say, and how would this really happen?
Well, from my perspective, and Bob can answer this, it would take a lot of vetting and a lot of proving the security and getting all of the approvals before anything like that happened. And we would do that well before we actually went down any route of development. So any time that we didn't waste any time.
And I would just add that in a controlled education classroom setting, it potentially would be more accepted than just making it available. so to speak. I used to be the superintendent at Snake River Correctional Institution, which is where they have the Blue Room. And in that setting, it's very controlled. The person going in there doesn't really have any control over any of the features, et cetera. And that's the kind of protections that would need to be in place for any use outside of a controlled classroom or education lab kind of location.
I think what we can do as well is you know, the three examples I've given is to learn from them. So the idea of like the Cena company, they are integrating with a program at the Fairmont Correctional Facility down in Colorado. So, you know, approaching them saying, what difficulties did you have actually getting over the kind of the boundaries, the borders, the risks, the logistics to actually get it in there? You know, what did you learn? And hopefully they'd be willing to share. That's the whole idea of collaboration, integration, and sharing and learning. So, you know, this isn't starting from scratch. This is not me with a big idea saying, look what we can do. There's people out there already doing this who have an understanding that we can learn from.
Thank you, Simon. I know other people have questions. He'll be here for the rest of the day, and he'll be back at his table to try out his equipment to get a feel for immersive technology if you haven't done so yet.